I'm E.
I'm Rob.
I'm Neil.
Welcome to the next movement, folks.
Attention. All T800 and T1000 models to the front of the stage. I repeat, T800 and T1000 only. No TXs. Not even if you look like Kristana Loken. T800, T1000. Let's go.
Hey, yo, machine nomenclature on Earth can be the oddest thing. Like in the 80s, it wasn't the words that needed processing, chopped in beige boxes and spit out in dot matrix. Microsoft made it cause our stray thoughts hated being lost. It grated when that paperclip talked while I was trying to be creative. Those heady days have faded into memory. I'm jaded, I waited, but never did the kind of numbers Hemingway did. Reprinted in every language, celebrated for generations to sample. Listen. These days I've changed the cadence to a pace that I can handle. Recalibrate the treadmill, not enough to break the pencil. But when life just ain't eventful, it's enough to shake the tendrils off the rental. With the engine of a Maserati, within the body of a 1958 Ford Edsel racing a Tesla. Outdated like a Hummer at the nadir of my little red Corvette summer.
Neil Drumming, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure.
Oh. Thank you. Once again,
yeah, of course. So you are a man of many talents, and one of the most recent examples of this is Riding on Airplanes, a project that you released a few months ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you don't really consider yourself a rapper. But I'm wondering if doing a project like this has forced you to think about how you've defined that word and the people who engage in this craft. Does an album like Riding on Airplanes widen the scope?
Okay, so to the first part, like, yeah, I don't consider myself a rapper. I mean, I guess there's the obvious version, right? If you rap, you're probably a rapper. You know what I mean? If you've done it more than
Yeah.
once, you're probably a rapper. I think the reason I don't think of myself that way is just because I think that that has too much of a connotation of like, that I would be somebody who would be doing this full time or that I would be somebody who would perform or whatever. I think um, I guess if I was going to be put on the spot, I'm a writer who decided to write a project that would be expressed through rap.
Hmm. How has it made you think about rap in a different way? Has it made you think about rap in a different way?
Not really at all. Like in the sense that I've always like loved hip hop and I've always loved rap and I've always rapped honestly behind closed doors and
Mm.
I mean I rapped in college. Like a friend of mine is on the album Dr. Oop. He's like an indie guy. I don't know if you heard it from the West Coast, and we used to be in a group in college, but that's like my sophomore, junior, senior year of college, and I think confronted with the notion that we would perform and like take it super seriously, that's when I was like, I'm pulling out of this. Whereas Droop has probably released like, I don't know, 8 albums since then. Like he took
Mm.
it really seriously and he was trying to convince me to do so, but I could never wrap myself around the entirety of what it would mean to do that.
Mm. Mm.
You know?
Got it.
But as far as how I think about it, like what I like and what my interests are and what I think the power of it is, that hasn't changed. Maybe the only thing that's changed is like figuring out how I would do it. Like if somebody was gonna hear it, if it's actually gonna go out to the world, what do I sound like? Like, what is my
Mm.
style?
Yeah, and I think we might dig into that a bit. I mean, as E said, you are a man of many talents. You've worked as a journalist, you've produced radio shows and podcasts, you've written and directed a film, but this is your first public foray into music. When we started talking through IG about doing this episode, you mentioned that you have no intention of touring on this album, getting famous, or making any money. You just wanted to give something back to the culture. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you ended up deciding to give back to the culture in this way, like at this time.
Well, I'll be honest. Like, I don't, I don't think I wanted to give back to the culture. I think I just wanted to participate in it. Like, I don't think the culture needs anything from me. Like, I think it's doing fine on its own. I think for me, it was very like selfishly motivated. I started making, I mean, I've always kind of like done the different aspects of making rap music, like made beats at different times, wrote rhymes at different times. Like you mentioned that I like wrote a film. There's rapping in that movie. I wrote all of those rhymes. So it's always been something that's sort of like in here. It's like feels like The best way I could describe it is it feels like a second language or maybe a first language. Like it's like I've been listening to it so long. I'm now 51 years old. I work out problems. I complain to myself. I make observations in rhyme in my head at different times in my life if I'm walking down the street, if I'm thinking about something. So it's just kind of like part of me in this way that feels like natural, but it was never like surfaced in a way that I thought, I would do it for other people to consume. And so, but at the time that this album came about, it was just I don't know. I didn't think we would get into this so soon. I was just so lonely. It was just the middle of the pandemic and I was thinking a lot and I was by myself a lot. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get I'm gonna download the latest version of Logic, and I'm just gonna make beats because I got nothing. I'm doing nothing at night except getting off of this Zoom meeting with my colleagues and drinking myself silly while watching like Marvel movies. And it's like maybe I should make something because that's that's at the core of who I am when I'm in my best is like making something. So I'll just like let me just start fucking around with beats. That was it. That was the beginning of it. It's like let me just start making some beats. And I thought like I had an idea for something that I thought I hadn't heard. Not that I hadn't heard, but like there was a sound that this is really stupid. I was listening to this. There's this Norwegian singer named Sandra Lerka, and he just makes this really beautiful music. And I think it's just, everybody had their like sad way of venting their sadness during that period of time. You were just doing whatever you were doing to like make yourself feel something, right? And so I was just listening to this guy, and I just kept thinking, like, his music has such these pretty chord changes. I wish I could do beats like that. Like, I just wanted to try to figure out how to do like momentarily poignant chord changes in hip hop tracks. That is a really small ambition, right? It was like I just wanted to make myself feel something, and so I just started making beats, and then there was like a weird progression, which I'm sure we'll get into, that turned into the actual writing of the thing. But it was really just about the sound.
Mm. Yeah, good for you. I mean, I just drank myself silly in Marvel movies and didn't make anything. So hats off
Yeah.
to you for doing something.
It's interesting that you're talking about this creative process and it's come up because that was one of my next questions. As I've been listening to this album, I've been thinking about the title because it feels like this project is structured in a way that was influenced by the space it was created in. It feels like you got all the time in the world, so you're sharing your thoughts with us in a conversation that feels comfortable and relatable. So I appreciate learning that background because you can hear it through the project.
That's nice to know. Yeah. It's funny because I always think of the project as having been created during the pandemic, but the airplanes part is when we were coming out of it, and I started flying again. And, it's just like, so like I was making the music and I wrote like you write like a half bar, you write like a chorus or something. And I started writing a little bit here and there I started I had a duplex in Brooklyn, 2 floors, and the bottom floor was a basement, and all my equipment was down there. And it was really just like just really just like my computer, and it was just like this big empty space, and I was there by myself. I turn all the lights out, maybe turn the lights red, and like literally buy a bottle of wine and just like start making stuff. But then as we started to get out more, I was writing more, so like the verses started getting written. Airplanes are like a really good place to think. So I started writing on airplanes, and that's where the title came from. And honestly, I hate the title, but every other good title was taken. Like the best title, okay, I'm just gonna say this. Premium Economy is the name that it should be, right? That's the album. That's what it should be called. It's like it feels perfect to me, but I'm really selfish. And there's another band, some Swedish band, that has an album called Premium Economy. I was like, I don't want to take anybody else's name, but writing on airplanes is pretty pretentious. But I will say the name, I wanted it to connote that I was writing because I'm not, I don't know. I know Pharoah Monch. Like I've spoken to him, like we're sort of friends. That guy's a rapper. Like, you know what I mean? Like what he's doing, that level of performance, I can't aspire to. Like that level of control. Like, but I can write, so it's like I wanted to put an emphasis on the skill that I have. It's like I'm not him. I'm not like Breeze. I'm not like, these guys are something else. They're doing it. Their elevation is somewhere that I don't imagine touching.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I didn't really like elaborate on this like I should have, but I like the title Riding on Airplanes because it really connects with the way that you are doing this album. Like when you're on an airplane, you don't have anywhere to go. So like you're just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
So for me, it really connects.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad because I think it's appropriate. It just, I was like, I would tell like my girlfriend and be like, let's go riding on an airplane. And they're like, I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts about what it could be? I was like,
Oh man. Well, I don't know if they're still your girlfriend, but I appreciate it.
Well, she's a flight attendant, so it's even more relevant to her. Like a lot of it comes from, a lot of the stuff like references are from her.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. How has this project both challenged and strengthened your relationship with storytelling?
Well, okay, so I guess I'll start with the strengthened part, the easy part. Not easy, but the strengthened part is I always thought that you could do this, or I always thought that I could do it. That I always thought that like I could make songs into stories. I'm not the first person to do this. I'm not even close. Like, I mean, my fan, I think of Slick Rick automatically, but like A$AP Rock is a huge influence on me. One of my favorite, maybe my favorite MC. People do it all the time, but I wanted to tell stories that felt like me. I wanted to take away, to strip the ego out. I wanted to write a navel gaze. I mean, it's a Death Cab for Cutie rap album. Like it's an emo rap album. Like, and I wanted to do that and I didn't know whether I could and make it sound like me and make it, like, so the biggest, like, not the biggest compliment, but one of the things that makes me feel like I accomplished this is that people who know me, who have heard it, is like, that sounds like you. That's your sense of humor. That's your tone. And I'm like, okay, so that's the thing that like I got right. The challenge was just like making songs out of things, like thinking, like I thought a direct correspondence to like training I have had is like, I've written movies, I've written a bunch of screenplays. Screenplays are written in 3-act structure. I'm really familiar with 3-act structure. I grew up at a time when almost every single rap song had three verses. So I was like, oh, this is sort of easy. But that's sort of changing. And that doesn't really necessarily map 1-to-1. Like 3 verses and 3 acts in a story or a movie are not exactly, it's not exactly the same thing. It's not like an easy translation. So I think trying to get them to still feel like stories in a way, and not all of them are, some of them are musings or whatever, but just like to try to get across that kind of like feeling of it being really personal and it being like specific to my world. That was the challenge. I think one of the things that I started out trying to do, and you can hear it on maybe like 2 verses on the album, is I was really trying to, this is so embarrassing. I just love A$AP Rock so much that I was like, how do you do what he does? I was like, I can't do like phonetically what he does. But then I started really digging into what he actually does. And what he does is create pictures. So it's like little image after little image after little image, right? That's how he does it. And he conveys an idea through that. And I realized you can't do that. Like, you're not ready for that yet. Like, you don't think that way. Like, he's a visual artist. I've seen this. He thinks that way. I don't think that way. So part of the challenge was breaking my allegiance to the people I love. Him, Elucid, all those people, like being like, that's not you. You have to figure out what you are. Like, what do you sound like? What do you do? And I realized, I think it's sort of a dryness, and it is kind of a more obvious storytelling. I don't. It's not like as cryptic as him. It's like a little bit more frank, but still and like a little less image driven and more like linguistically driven, I guess. And I think that's what it is. But it was hard separating myself and be like, I really wish I could do what he does. I really wish I could. But then just being like, maybe one day, if you want to completely rip somebody off, maybe you can aspire to that. But like in the meantime, what can you do that will be additive and that people will find new or refreshing?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, and I'm an outsider sort of looking in, but it feels like you were able to find your own voice, and the delivery is one of the things I appreciate most about writing on airplanes. It just feels so simplistic and easy to digest. It's soothing at times. Like, you have a really nice voice.
Oh,
so I found myself being like comforted by it throughout the album when I was listening. Just hearing about your history and knowing that you used to rap, I was curious about like how this delivery was developed. Like, was it specific to this project? Is something that you intentionally had to work on? Is this always how you've rapped?
I think I was a lot goofier when I was younger, and
Okay.
I think I just don't have, like so I'm from Queens, but and I rapped a little bit then, but when I really started and got into hip hop and like had rappers and hip hop folk around me in like mass, I had just gone to California for college, so I went to USC in '92. So my influences were not like, it could have been Snoop at the time, but it wasn't. It was Farside and Souls and like, dudes who were weird, and we were weird. We smoked a lot of weed and had locks and the whole thing. And so I was trying to do weird shit, with my voice and with like, not so much with my voice, but just like say weird shit, like goofy shit. Like I remember starting a verse. There's like one verse where I just like in the middle just go like salami. Like I just say like a weird, it's like we're just trying to be, we just thought we were on that shit. And like, I appreciated all of that, but what happened before this record was I worked for 7 years. I mean, I got older, and then I worked for 7 years at This American Life, and I was a producer, and I was on air, and like I got to hear myself talk and what I sound like, and I got comfortable with what I sound like. And so when I started making the album, I was like, well, what do I sound like when I'm on the air? Like, it's not exactly that because I got to do different things, but I'm not going to try that hard to break out of that. Like, this is what I sound like. A little bit nerdy, like a little bit nasal, whatever the fuck it is. That's what it is. So just work with that.
That's interesting because I had wondered if the way that you've told stories through other mediums influence your approach on this, and it sounds like it
Absolutely.
has.
Absolutely. Like, Doom did this, so I'm not going to take credit for it in any way at all. A lot of people have done it, but like, if you've written screenplays, it's very easy to change character. So
Hmm.
or write in third person. And a lot of the album, I even have a verse where I say like I'm switching to third person now because it's easier. Like it's easy to think of yourself. And this is a thing that like, not to be like rappers don't do enough of this, but just like writing out of character, like writing someone else, like creating a character, writing in the voice of someone else it's literally the wordiest form of music in the world. Like we have the most access to language and words because of what it is. So
Hmm.
I'm like, we should, I like when people try different stuff and like use the techniques, use literary techniques. I mean, that's another reason why the album was called Writing on Airplanes, because I was trying to accentuate the fact that it's a written form. It's a written form. It's not like there used to, like for a while, there was like this myth, or maybe it's true, I don't know. Biggie doesn't write, Jay doesn't write. They don't write. They just go in the booth. I'm like, I'm not impressed by it. That doesn't like make me happy. Like I'm not like, ooh, that's cool. Like it's a form. I respect writing. Like I'm a writer. And just to like go slightly on a tangent, that's why it made me so mad that when 8 Mile came out, the poster was Eminem with a pad, like writing. Do you remember this poster? He was
Yeah.
right. It was like as if, oh, when a white guy does it, like it's literature, And I was like,
Yeah.
wait. It's like we
Hmm.
do write this stuff. Like it's people
Hmm.
sit down and think about things. And so I don't know. I just like anyway. I just kind of wanted to lean into that.
Yeah. We've already sort of touched on this. You talked about your history of rhyming and you realizing this was not your path, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't want to go down this path. I wondered though, like after doing a project like this and finding your footing and your own voice and doing it in a way that feels more comfortable for you, do you think that you'll continue to make albums like this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if I'll continue. I mean, I want to. Whether I will have the time is, it's like it's hard to choose a thing that is time consuming that pays you nothing when you're my age. You know what I mean? I have a
Mm.
mortgage, I have a kid. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't
Yeah.
just doing some shit. Like, the pandemic was a very unique opportunity for people to do new things because there was just like a lot of spare time. But I would like to. I mean, the thing that I was thinking about now is I would like to try to rhyme over somebody else's beats because my beats were a form. They were like out of necessity. You know what I mean? Like I had to find there was stuff that I wanted to play with and sounds that I wanted to play with, but like when I started crafting beats for myself, they're almost like very scaled back on purpose. They're sort of done to like highlight a little bit like me and like just what
Mm.
I was saying.
Hmm.
And I wonder what it's like. Also, I just like when people collaborate, and I would be interested to see what it would be like. Especially like there's just like a kind of newfangled style of beat, this side of like post Dilla, loping, kind of sort of like offbeat. Like I've never rhymed. I wonder how people rhyme to that. Like I'm just interested in trying to push myself to find a different cadence, even if I'm still be myself.
Mm. Yeah.
but I'm not like by any. It would have to be, it would have to be somebody fresh that I liked. And I talked about. I mean, I don't want to put his name out there, but like Don Will has been playing some beats, and I'm like, dude, I know you're not gonna rhyme on all of those beats. Like, you got, throw your man some.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, send Neil Drumming some beats, folks. He's looking for beats.
I mean, if somebody was out, here's the one thing. My one thing about that is I kind of want to do all one person, because I don't know, because I just on my brain I don't have like a big sphere of people. I can't have that many people around me. Like I just pretty narrow in my. So if it was like, but if there was one person who was like, yeah, I work with a has-been rapper who's never gonna tour and never gonna make us any money, then yeah, I'm down. Let's do something.
All right, so we've been talking about process and kind of behind the scenes stuff as far as concept for the album and your writing. I want to talk a little bit about the content and some of the songs, starting with the features. The features on this project are great. You've got Nappy Nina, Breeze Brewing. You mentioned Dom Will, Dr. Oop, all great. How did these particular folks end up being the people who contributed verses to the project?
These are my friends. These are people I know. Like I met the person I know the least is Nina, but we met. We met actually I think to talk about This American Life. It was actually. I debated whether I was going to give this away on the air. I had this dream, right? Before I had this dream. Okay, so I used to work at Serial, which is they make podcasts for the New York Times, and they're famous for making the podcast Serial. And I was, trying to develop new shows for them, and they were really, it was sort of like whatever, like we could come up with anything, and the fiction wasn't off the table. And I had this fantasy, right? I already knew Breeze. I could get to how I knew Breeze before this, but I had this fantasy that you could make a sequel to Prince Among Thieves and make it a podcast. Like that was my dream. I wanted to make a podcast version of Prince Among Thieves because it's already like a movie, right? Like speaking of theme albums and things that are whole, like I was like, oh, this would be amazing. So Breeze got me. Oh, so the idea I had was to do it. I thought there'd be this cool idea. The idea I had was like it would be like the daughter of the character in Prince Among Thieves, because he dies at the end, but he has a daughter, and she's like. Is a whole story around it. I did this kind of story about like the daughter of the main character, and so Breeze got me a phone meeting with Prince Paul, and he was like, "It sounds kind of corny to me, but if you could get the money, like we could do work on it." But number one, I couldn't get the money, but also two, Prince Paul tells you that your idea for a sequel to one of his like most brilliant ideas is corny. It doesn't give you a lot of like faith to keep pushing ahead, but. When I was thinking about that, I was like looking for female rappers that I thought were dope, and my friend Kaleem, who's also on the album, was like, "Yo, you gotta check out Nina." So I reached out to her, and I had seen her I didn't realize I had seen her on the bus a couple of times because we both live in Crown Heights, so like in that part of Brooklyn. And so when we met at a coffee shop, this place called Daughter, R.I.P. Daughter was a great coffee shop, and we just talked. And she was like, "Yo, how did you get into This American Life? I've been trying to think about applying." I was like, "Oh well, it's like weird. We had stuff in common. You're like not like we had thoughts about the same things." And so we just stayed in touch. And when it was time to make the record, I just asked her. Breeze was the same. Breeze, Breeze, I had done a story about for This American Life about General Lee. Do you remember General Lee? That song, that Juggernaut song? About buying the General Lee car from Dukes of Hazzard. I love that song. And we were doing a thing about, I forget what it was about, but we were doing an episode about something, and it was appropriate. So I did an interview with him for This American Life. That's how we knew each other. What he does not remember is that when he used to work at Fat Beats, and I was like 30 or something, I gave him a CD of beats. I walked into Fat Beats, it's like, "Yo, dude, you gotta listen to my beats." And he doesn't even remember getting it, like talking to him, like nothing. And I was like, "Yeah, you really snubbed me, but it's whatever." Don and I are friends. We've just been friends for a long time. So Don Will and I this is a kind of a weird story behind us meeting too, but like that, I don't know. There's too many. I tend to go on and on. And Dr. Oop, I went to college with. He was my mentor for like 4 years.
Okay. All right. Well, the track that features Nina and Breeze is called Machines.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely one of the standouts for me. Could you talk a little bit about the concept for this track?
Machines was sort of like a lot of the songs start like, and I think probably this is true. A lot of people, you just start saying some shit and it sounds cool to you. But for me, I never wanted it to just stay some cool shit. Like I never let it turn into like a bragging rap. I try to let it turn into like something else. So like I take whatever the bars are, whatever the ideas are, and try to make it into a whole thing. So it sort of ended up being me talking about getting older, which is obviously a ton of what the album is about. But it's just like me talking about getting older in the sort of language of like talking about machines and technology. It's pretty scattershot, but it does have an idea behind it, right? But I didn't have more to it, right? When I mashed it up with the beat, I was like, I don't have a whole song here, you know? And I do want to have some guests. So who do I think could do this? And Nina was sort of an immediate, and then Breeze can do anything. And when I asked him, I mean, Nina was like, yeah, cool. And I was like, this is great because she's like um, young and just like has a different relationship to technology. And I loved her verse because it feels like a different generation and what she's talking about. Her connections are really dope. And then Breeze, I was just like, would you be into this? Because I'll say this, and a lot of rappers I've talked to, whether it was asking them to do This American Life stuff or asking them to be on songs or just how to talk to them, don't like to be given an idea. They don't want to write to an idea or write to a theme. Weirdly enough, I find that strange. But he was like, challenge accepted. Like he was like, absolutely, this is a great, I'll do something different. And it took him a very long time. The things that they say about Breeze are true. He's a perfectionist. Probably my top 5 favorite MCs. Like just unbelievable, but also a perfectionist. And so I just feel like, is it done? Like he said it to me when he sent me the rough. I was like, perfect. He's like, no. And I don't know. No, this isn't ready. I was like, but it's like better than 99.9% of anything that anyone's written. Like, but yeah, that's how I got him. Those 3, and it just seemed like I just like the generational thing of like me and Nina, and I mean, me and him are we're probably around the same age, but like just having her in the mix made it feel broad.
The track featuring Don Will and Dr. Oop is called "The Cost of Fangs." My take on this song has been it's a song about aging and unexpected consequence of growing into adulthood, whether that may be the loss of friends or having to pay taxes or what have you. But you used horrorcore rap as a focus for reminiscing. And, instead of like saying, do you remember back in the days, you're saying, do you remember horrorcore rap? I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the decision to make horrorcore the thing that you're looking back on in this track.
It's because I mean, a lot of the instruction, the song covers like getting older, but the instruction I gave to everybody was a song about like how hard it is to maintain your male friendships as you get older. That's the sort of butt of it, and a lot of it, they're true story. Like also the song was originally supposed to be like 9 people. It was going to be like every single guy I knew who had either been in a group or like Adam Mansbach was going to write like I would just ask every guy. I was like, we're going to make a posse cut about not having our friends anymore. That's going to be like 9 people long, but like people didn't have time for that, and everyone was like, no one's going to listen to that song, and it won't, it's just too long. So that was the instruction I gave, was like, what is it like to lose your friends, right? Or like, and the hardcore thing is just that it's just kind of funny to me that the scary thing used to be like like dark imagery and like all around, and the thing that got scary as we got older was just like not being able to hold on to people and friendships, and like that seems more scary. Not that hardcore was actually scary, but it just felt funny to me that like the thing I think about now, the things that concern me, the things that worry me, is that like I haven't spoken to my best friend in 6 months. Stuff like that. Like that became scary to me because it's like, how do you stem the tide? It feels you can't control like drifting away from people and losing time and things like that. And that feels scarier to me than anything. We used to rap about, you know, if there's a reference, the song references flatliners and grave diggers and like all that sort of bullshit. I mean, it was fun. It was like really, really fun to talk about dark imagery and gothic shit and people getting nailed to things and like whatever. But it's like, as you get older, the things that are upsetting and for lack of a better word, scary are mundane things, are life things. So that's why the song that's where that came from.
Yeah, they're the less like sensationalized things and the more everyday things, for sure. The track following "The Cost of Fangs" is called "Apocryphal."
Uh-huh.
At the top of the song, you issue a disclaimer telling the listener this isn't history because this is pretty made up. The track goes on to tell the story of a young person who seems to be a talented rapper who never seemed to reach their potential. On the hook, you say, "We've got a lot of legends. How about more myth?" how much of you, or maybe a version of you, I'm even more interested to hear you talk about this now that you've mentioned your history as a rapper. How much of you, or maybe a version of you, or what you saw for yourself when you were younger, is included in this song?
I think it's just the parallel. The song is about a very specific person who we all know. I had once heard a rumor, I think it was either on Video Music Box, it was somewhere, that this person who made probably one of my favorite albums of all time was just making beats and didn't want to rap. And he took his beats to a record label and they were like, we can't figure out whether this is any good because nobody's rapping over it. So he went home and like forced himself to rap so that he could give them a demo that made sense. The clues to who this is are everywhere in this song. You just listen to it again. Like, it's very obvious who it is. But anyway, and also like, I sort of don't want to say their name because I'm afraid that they'll think it's insulting, but it's like, but that's what the song is about. But it's a parallel to me because it's like, oh, this is like, you don't really think of yourself as a rapper, but sometimes it is necessary, or the circumstances arise where you end up doing it, and that's what the song is about. The reason it's called Apocryphal is because the only thing I know is the story that I just told you. What happened in between, who he talked to, he asked, and how he felt like. I don't know of any of that. I just made that up for the song. That's just like me trying to dramatize an idea. And I love the reason that the chorus is. I love those like apocryphal things you heard. Like I remember hearing like, oh, Q-Tip wants to learn how to play the bass, like stuff that you heard on Video Music Box or something, and you're like, is this true or not? Like you never knew whether it was true or not, but because this is our culture in some ways, like it felt like myth, like. Is it true that so-and-so that got rejected by the studios because he didn't rap and like, that's how he became a rapper? Like that's a cool, and I think the myth legend thing is like a lot of rappers be like, I'm a legend, but I'm like, but the myth is the part it's interesting to me. That's the compelling part. What's the myth?
Yeah, I like that. I also really like the track Dwayne.
I don't know. I tell stories for a living is the story that I tell myself. Hella boring confessional to my telehealth professional during our sessional weekly cage match, pouring over 7 days of stress so she can say that, yes, I'm showing progress, yet in the back of my mind, I'm like, what am I paying for? I'm praying for a mind-blowing concept to kick in the head. A mantra for when it's hard to get out of bed without the dread and the crippling doubt and the spirit of my ancestors whispering, what the hell's he bitching about? Everything is triggering now, ridiculous. Everything is giving me ouchies. The kid in us is grouchy. Maybe there's colic in the fountains. Maybe. Grown 5-year-olds seeking solace in the mountains with $1,000 hiking gear, stoned on a walkabout. How can we be heroes? What the fuck was Bowie talking about? If you wanna save the day, then you gotta think fast. Our spotters say you got to with that blast. Elevator shaft, detonator, C4, a paint job, and a shitload of screen doors plus glass. Who gives a fuck about glass, Dwayne? Put the other guy back on the phone. He's alone and scared. Do you think he's gonna care what you do to him if he makes it out of there?
As someone who watched Die Hard many, many times growing up, and whose parents until very recently still had a beta tape copy of Die Hard, I just appreciated the nod to the film and the song's hook. But you were talking about using literary devices earlier. I could be off on this, but it seems like maybe you're using Dwayne T. Robinson to like characterize your own internal struggle. This song is in large part about mental health and therapy. How did you end up connecting Dwayne T. Robinson to what seems like a pretty personal description of your experience in therapy?
Well, it's funny. I'm glad. First of all, thank you for picking that up because no one has said to me like I know exactly what that is from. Like, which I'm like, it's the most obvious reference on the album, but okay. So thank you for picking up on that. I wrote the chorus separately because it was started out as like a verse because I just really love Die Hard. It's like it oscillates between being my somewhere between my fifth and first favorite movie of all time. I think about it all the time, even as it dates not fantastically as time goes on. But I still think it's wonderful, and I think about it all the time, and I watch it every Christmas. So I think about it a lot. So I think I was just kind of like, it's like you're writing blah 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 blah, and I had written a couple bars about this blah blah blah, and I set it aside. But then Dwayne is very much the pandemic song. It's a little bit of cry for help. I was feeling like I was drowning a little bit, and my friends didn't notice that I was talking to them and they didn't know how bad I was feeling or how depressed I was. And that song came out of that feeling, right? But then I just remember thinking, oh, he's all alone in the building in Die Hard. Like he's got one person that he's calling out to, and he's like crawling through things, and he's all like beat up and sad, and like it's like so it's like, oh, that's analogous to the way I'm feeling, like holed up in this basement, feeling like I don't know, I was just sinking. I just felt like I was sinking, and I didn't want to say it out loud to people, but I was mad, a little bit mad at my friends for not noticing, and which is unfair to them. And if any of them listen to this, I do not hold you accountable for my mental health during the pandemic. That was just me. I could have said a little bit more like out loud how I was feeling. But anyway, but it just seemed like the picture connected for me. Like the way he's just like crawling around with blood all over him and like crawling through tunnels, being like, I'm completely alone out here. Somebody help me. That is the
like
connection.
Fighting a silent fight in some regard, a fight that no one else can see.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit and focus on your other work for a little bit. You mentioned this already, but you worked for Serial Productions. You were the managing editor, correct?
Yeah.
And this is a company, for people that don't know, that created the Serial and S-Town podcast. I was a huge fan of the first season of Serial, which I mean, most of the world was. And in that series, that first season profiled Adnan Syed. Hearing about this case and the story had a profound effect on me, and I would imagine that that was the case for a lot of folks that were tapping in. And he's since been released from prison, and I like to imagine that Serial had something to do with that. Could you just talk about your involvement with the company and this particular season, if you worked for the company then, and even if you didn't, maybe talk about the impact that this story had on you?
I definitely did not work on that season. I got into Serial with S-Town.
Okay.
I think the impact that it had on me though was like Serial was just it was just a really new way of telling a story in audio. And it was compelling, even if if you weren't engaged by the the outrage or the feelings about the crime, but you were just interested in how a story was told. It was just told in a really fantastic way. It's really difficult to pull that. Up until that point, it was sort of unfathomable to tell that kind of story in a podcast form. And I think for me personally, like joining Serial meant I got to know those people and understand how their brains work and how someone like Sarah could translate her thinking to that story while still like reporting it. Like it's not opinion, but she's in it like you feel her presence in it, and she's an authority speaking. And so I just learned a lot about like how to present yourself in audio with confidence. And also like to me, Serial is part and parcel with This American Life because it comes out of This American Life and getting to know all of those people at once. I've been at This American Life I guess I was there for 7 years before I joined Serial. So Serial had been ongoing, but then when they started working on S-Town, they asked me to like start sitting in and on edits and like become the associate editor. And then I got to actually do it like firsthand with them. And that's S-Town is actually, it's funny. I think I feel the way about S-Town that most people feel about Serial. And I still work with Brian sometimes. Yeah. I still work with Brian on another project now.
S-Town was really good too. I really enjoyed that. It was so intriguing. And just to go back to what you said about Sarah in season 1 of Serial, I think I didn't consciously realize that, but you're right. She kind of threw herself into the story. I think it's very easy to do something like that and kind of report on it from like a really like outside looking in perspective, but she was really involved. I mean, it sounded like a lot of times emotionally involved, and I think that that's what helped draw me in when I was listening to it. It was just very well done.
And I think she did not intend to be that involved in that way. Like I think it just was a matter of fact, is a matter of course of constructing the story. And I think that lends itself, that's part of why I think people were engaged by it, because there's a tension there of a reporter being drawn in a way that like maybe even they're like trying to have some distance and they're sort of being drawn in. And I think people were aware of that tension and they could feel it.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned having written screenplays and film. In 2013, you released the film Big Words, which you wrote and directed. The film starred folks like Dorian Missick, Darian Sills Evans, Benga Akinabe. Jean Grey is in it. It got into a few festivals that year, I think. Seemed well reviewed. What was your experience like making that film? And is writing and directing still something you want to pursue?
Making and directing that film is probably the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. It without question. It was before I wrote a thing, and it was based on, I was probably like 36 or something when I wrote it or something like that, or when I started. I can't remember the timing exactly when I started writing it, but it was one of those things where, your first movie is your whole life. It's like there's so much that's built up to that point where like, you had so much you want to get out. So by that time, I had my relationship to hip hop was like mostly figured out. I had been a music critic. I had met a bunch of rappers, and I had a bunch of friends who had tried their hand at it and were still involved. And I just I had something that I really wanted to say about it. And so it was easy to like have the ideas of the movie. And then to write something that other people were like, because we didn't have much money. If I told you how much that movie cost, you would be like, okay, that's ridiculous. We didn't have much money. So people signed on, all the rappers, all the actors played, worked for scale. And we just didn't have a lot of money. People were signing on because they believed in the material. Dorian, it's funny, when we would do Q&As, Dorian, there's essentially three leads, but if you wanted to think about it being a sole lead, it was Dorian, Mystic, and we would do Q&As, and people would be like, how did you meet Dorian? And I'd be like, well, I wrote him on Facebook, and he said yes. And Dorian would always be like, don't do that to me. That is not why I said yes. I said yes to looking at the script because I had read your writing as a music critic, because I was a music critic for a decade before I wrote the movie. And he'd actually, like, people actually do pay attention to that stuff, or they did back then. I don't know. So he's like, yeah, you seem to know about music and hip hop in this respectful way. So I read your screenplay, but then I liked it and I agreed to do it. And everybody signed on because they thought the material was worthwhile. And that feeling is unbeatable. Like it's like people are basically working for free because they think your vision means something and is important to them. And I've never had a better feeling than that. It was the most collaborative process I've ever had in my life. Like, I remember like not realizing it was real until the production designer was like, sent me images of their, I forget what the production assistant, whatever, making fake weed for the weed smoking scene. I'm like, you're putting this much work into it? I'm not sure I put that much work into it when I was writing it. And they're like, figuring out all the different formulas for like how to make the best weed appear on screen. And I was like, all of these people give a fuck. Like, they care about what I wrote. And like, it was fun. I mean, I also like fucked up a big chunk of my life, and like, it was maybe a little too young for it. Like, there's some personal shit happened in there that was not great. But as far as a creative process, it was spectacular. Now the second part of your question, I don't know that I'm cut out for the way that filmmaking works. I think I'm a little bit too independent. I think I don't have the patience for it. What I mean by that is like, I'm talking about the parts where you sell yourself. I mean, the movie didn't make any money at all, and I didn't really know how to promote it after I had made it. I thought I'm one of those people who's like, I did this. This is good. You should respect it. I don't know how to go out and hustle, like pay attention. Like, it's the same with the record. Like, no one's heard the album. It's like, I don't know how to move like that. I'm not one of those people. Like, it's interesting. The reason I know that is because, or the point of comparison is, Ava DuVernay released my movie, and Ava DuVernay was a marketing person before she was a filmmaker, like professionally, and she knows how to move product and get people to pay attention to things. And she was pretty consistently pissed at me, I think, for being like, yo, you gotta hustle. I'm putting this movie out. You gotta hustle this movie. You gotta like be out there and talking about it. And I'm just not that good at that stuff. I've just never been great at it. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons why. It's also really hard to get a movie made. It's expensive, and like, it's an indie film. There's a million reasons, but I was writing screenplays right up until I got the job at This American Life. And when I got the job at This American Life, I could make a story in 2 weeks and get it on the air to like 3 million people. So I was like, well, I get to do this. Like, it's not the same thing, but I'm a storyteller. I like any medium. And so this is cool. I didn't know people did this and did this well. So I'm gonna do this because it's easier, and it's like much more frictionless. That's how that happened. I still think about it, but I don't know. The film industry is even harder now for people, and that was 15 years ago, something like that.
Let's begin. Assalamu alaikum, people of goodwill. I offer you the greeting of thought, manifested skill to fight finally reveal the open-end chapter. As real as the flesh that you're embodied in. To the skull cavity, your mind is rotten, and I'll be riding in. And it might have been a slight rotation warp to curve the course. Of course I'm cordial when I report. I won't distort, I don't contort, connect, conduct, collect, console, or conceal. In full control of the role of the wheel. My eyes are my appliance to decipher the science, omitting defiance with the high-tech mic check. The buttons that flashed are pushed for absolute destruction. Your structure is lifted from the ground. The foundation mound is broke, so you float around. I'm embedded in what is known as beat. Let it be shown every enzyme is complete. In time, you'll see the pace of the post pump. Rapidly, heart rate happily marched. I happen to be the dark man who holds the charts. I arch my horizontal line to make a rainbow. But it ain't the same though.
So every episode we spend the second half of the show talking about a hip hop album, but with our guest, chosen by our guest. And tonight we were talking about a book of human language by Aceyalone. So how did we get here? Why did you pick this album?
First of all, I want to be perfectly honest. Like, I am not one of those people I'm not one of those hip hop fans who like remembers lyrics verbatim and can be like, oh, my favorite part about this song is this. I don't hold them in my head.
Same.
Yeah. Okay. Good. The thing about this book of human language is that it's not even that I go back to it that much. Like, there's other, like I was debating when you guys said we talk about something. It was like the obvious choice for me would have been like an Aesop Rock album, like Impossible Kid or Skeleton or something. But this album when I heard it, it just changed. It broadened the spectrum to me of what was possible. Like, I think I'd always wanted rappers to be more ambitious, and I feel like a dick when I say that, because whatever, it's art, people do what they do. But I just wanted to hear more, because like I said, it's such a wordy form. It has very specific tools. You can use language in a way. You can use language in hip hop in ways that I just feel like other genres don't have access to necessarily. And there are things that other genres do that hip hop artists seem reluctant to do. And AC was like, I'm doing that shit. Not only am I doing it or whatever, I listened to the album a lot because we were going to have this conversation. I was like, I don't even know what I think he was doing to this day. I have thoughts about what he was doing, but I'm like, it could go a lot of different ways, but there are some clues. There's some really good clues. And like, one of the reasons that I chose the album is because it changed the way I thought about music. And even when I was doing my own project, finally this project, writing on airplanes, I thought about it a lot. One thing specifically that I can point out, a very specific, is like the first real song on the album. Okay, so Aceyalone has already done one album by this time. Yeah. By the time he makes Book of Human Language, I think if you fuck with that sound, if you like knew that scene, you knew Aceyalone was an incredible lyricist. In fact, there's a rumor, speaking of myths, that he freestyled the whole first album, which I don't believe, but I think he freestyled a lot of it, and he was kind of seamless about it. Like, he's a brilliant like MC and like writer to the degree that he's writing whatever. And then, so for the second album, the first real song is him doing MC shit. The guidelines is, I'm dope. Like, I just battle rap, like blah 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 blah. I'm killing it. Look at me, like, do all the tricks and shit that I can do. And then his ego disappears for the rest of the album. It is not about him. I don't know who the fuck it's about. I don't know what it's about exactly. It's all axiomatic, metaphor, representation, impressionistic. It's the whole record after that until you get to the last song again. And that was just brilliant. It's like he just said, it was like he was like, I don't even need to convince you that I'm dope for like 12 tracks. Here's one song to remind you who I am. And then the rest of this is an experiment. And you either ride with it or you don't. And the boldness of that choice of just being like, I don't even need to talk about how good I am. That's not the point. Like, I'm just going to use how good I am to do another thing. And listening to it now, I guess my feeling was like, is he just creating emotional response? Is that what is it that simple, that he just makes you feel things like in Thief of the Night or Grandfather Clock? Is he just making you feel what it's like for time to pass, or what it's like for death to approach you, or what balance? Like, I just wonder, like, what was he attempting to do? But the fact that you can come back to it and still wonder, like, it holds up in that way. It's like an incredible feat, and it's ambitious, and ambition is always the thing I want. Like, some of these guys are some of the most fantastic writers in any genre. I don't get. It's like I'm not talking about rap. I'm talking about writing. Like these guys can write.
Yeah.
Like their use of language is spectacular. The use of their voices. I mean, like think about a Busta Rhymes. Like what is that? What that guy's doing sonically? But then I'm like, you could say more. I'll just be honest. Like you
Yeah.
could say more. You could say more things. Like
Yeah.
I'm not the only person to say this. Like
Yeah.
on Don Will's podcast, not that long ago, Homeboy Sandman said he was embarrassed by the number of things that people talk. He's like, I'm embarrassed that rappers only rap about 4 things. And I don't want to I'm not coming down on people. I just always wanted to see something new. And AC did that. And that was in 90, what was that? I don't remember, 99, 98 or something like that.
98, I think.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, and I held on to it. I've thought about it. I think about it whenever I think about what I would make. So when it came time to do something, it's not that, but I borrow some things from him for sure.
You said so many things I want to comment on, but let me start here. So you're talking about, rappers in general doing all these spectacular things with their writing. And I was just thinking, like looking at the lyrics, like from this album, like it could be studied in an English class. Like the stuff that he's writing and also like how he's phrasing things. I don't have the terminology for this, but so I'm not going to sound intelligent when I'm talking about it, but you could literally like take these lyrics, like host a class and literally go through them line by line and listen to him, and the way that he delivers them. It is fucking incredible. Like it's almost like he's studied this. I don't know if he did or not. Like I don't know what his history is with language and English and stuff like that, but like the stuff that he does is insane. It's crazy. And I wanted to ask you too, because you kind of said this just about how he was doing something different and how rappers then weren't doing what he was doing. He just kind of went for it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people don't explore in that way in hip hop? And do you think that's still the case now?
It's funny. I'm glad you asked this because I've been thinking about this a lot. At the time, I had just gotten to LA, right? But the Freestyle Fellowship, Project Below community was going strong, right? And those guys were like an art collective. They were like a salon. They were incubating their art amongst themselves without people looking at them at first, for a while. Like I think Freestyle Fellowship got a deal, but they've probably been doing that shit for like years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in a community of ambitious artists, you explore, you experiment. Especially if there's not like a radar on you from the outside being like, be like this or be like Snoop or whatever. They're just on their own bubble doing their thing. And I think that's what I think they were in a group where you couldn't, if you listen to the Freestyle Fellowship album or any of the Project Blow cats, one of the things that was interesting about them was, and this is analogous to like Juice Crew, and it's analogous to Wu-Tang in some degrees. When you have like a core group of dudes, a core group of MCs who are competing against each other, they find their own style. So AC doesn't sound like Mike and I. Mike and I doesn't sound like Jupiter. Like they sound like they had to differentiate themselves from each other, And AC found his thing that like, I could just as easily say Mike and I was my favorite MC, maybe to some degree, but AC at the time, just what he decided to do with his voice and his style resonated with me. He just found that, if you listen to the album, it's like a preacher, right? Like he put the right amount of reverb, the way he broadcasts, like everything is like an announcement, It's like, and if you listen to on the first album, there's a song called The Greatest Show on Earth. And it's like a rehearsal for this whole album, for the way he delivers. It's like this brilliant, like preacher man, carnival barker style. And he just was like, this is who I am for at least for this record. And I'm leaning into it. And I don't know, I just thought like it was so unique. And I think that's why I think that's like why it's so different. And like, it doesn't sound like anything else is because he figured out who he was and what he was trying to do. Do I think people are doing that today? I think if I could pile right now the people I'm fucking with, this is actually what makes me mad. This whole Drake Kendrick beef made me so mad because I was like, y'all are missing. These motherfuckers are talking about each other's families and shit. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. Meanwhile, Cavaliers album from last year was fucking incredible, dude. The shit that Cavaliers doing, Billy Woods is doing, Elusive, all of them. There's a Homeboy Sandman. There's some really amazing hip hop out right now, like beautiful shit. And the thing that I was saying about like how Aceyalone, like in Book of Human Language, kind of strips his ego away, and it's not really about him. The new Billy Woods album is like that. It's poetry, dude. I don't know who he's addressing exactly, but it's not about him. He's not trying to convince you that he's nice.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell you something else. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
something deeper going on in there. And I was like, I think right now, dude, now is a really fucking good time, dude. I'm into a lot of shit right now. Nina shit is dope.
Mm-hmm.
Nina shit is dope, dude. She has that song about, I think it's about the TSA. That shit's crazy,
Yeah.
dude. Like,
Yeah.
yo, there's some good shit, and the producers are finding like a new sound, and like, that's why I'm like, dude, I don't give a fuck about anybody. You know, even the comebacks, like like the old school rappers coming back. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't care about that right now. Like, I don't care about your comeback album. Like, I'm hearing this like newfangled shit, and I'm into it, man. It's just making
Yeah.
me think.
That's funny because I loved Breeze's LL Cool J references and his verse on your on your album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about Woods actually. I mean, mostly because the album came out. We actually saw Woods earlier this week, and as you're talking about like Aceyalone kind of expanding language in some way on this record, I just kept thinking about Woods. Woods at some point on this new album says the English language is violence. I hot
Yeah. Oh my god, I heard that like 2 hours ago. I was like, yo, that shit is profound.
Yeah. I hotwired it. I got a hold of the master's tools and dialed in. And it's like the same shit that AC's doing on this record. It's
Yeah.
making the English language their own.
Yeah. I'm glad you picked up on it. That shit. Yeah, that's why. Like, I think for a while I was in a grumpy place. I was like only listening to ASAP Rock and Homeboy Sandman and like a couple of my friends and shit. But like, it's just been a glut of hot shit. Like even some cats, Guilty Simpson's gotta be my age, but that motherfucker could rhyme. He's nice. I
Mm-hmm.
heard this dude Water from Chicago recently. I was like, that dude's nice. Like, there's a lot of nice MCing going on.
It's incredible to me that I think in our worlds, I'll speak for myself. I think as a fan of all the people that we're talking about, they seem so large to me, and yet there's still so many people that don't know about them, and it's so strange. Like Rob just said, we saw Woods a couple days ago, and just like the aura around him is just, it's larger than life. But there are like, I bet you if I stopped 20 people on the street today and said, do you know who Billy Woods is, they probably would tell me no.
I agree.
And it just is so wild to me that that's happening.
Yeah, it was wild when they were asking like, who does to ask Doechii who she likes, and she was like, I really love Doom, and then I really love West Side Gun, and nobody picked up on the Doom shit. Everybody's like, oh, West Side Gun, I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
this chick just says she likes Doechii, just says she likes Doom. Half of her fans have never heard of Doom, like,
Yeah.
and West Side Gun too, I guess, but like, I see how he fits into the mainstream more than like, even though he's not yet, but I understand what he's doing, how people would pick up on it. I mean, and that's not to say I'm like against a certain. I love Rock Marcy. I fuck with Marcy 100%, but like, yeah, there's just a lot. I mean, I think that's kind of a testimony to what I'm saying, which is like when I grew up, you had De La and or Jungle Brothers and Cool G Rap and Polo. Everybody was, you had people doing their thing, whatever their thing was, and it was different, and it was a whole spectrum of it. And I think right now that exists even in like underground shit. There's like a lot of fly, Marcy and Ka, rest in peace. Like there's so much stuff you could pick up on.
Maybe you've already said this, but I've heard a book of human language described as an underground classic. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but what makes that true beyond what you've already touched on?
Well, I don't know I don't know. Well, okay. So I'm gonna tell like a little, this might be a way of answering this question, but it might just be talking my ass off. So I used to work. I say used to a lot because this is what happens when you cross the 50. Everything is used to. I used to work at Entertainment Weekly. I was a entertainment journalist, and for a while I was running like the music section and the reviews. And I remember they were like, "Oh, let's do a top 25 hip hop albums." This had to be like 2002 or three or something like that. And I put Book Human Language on the list of the top 25 albums. And I got so much hate mail, not just for that, but they were like, there's not a Tupac album on this list. And I was like, that was just my way of saying what I thought, it's like, I'm going to put Book of Human Language on this, but not any Tupac albums. And I got a lot of hate mail and a lot of like, I would never do anything like that again because I don't fuck with lists. I don't care what other people think is good. I don't give a shit. People like what they like. I wish people were exposed to more things so that they could choose. You know what I mean? But I don't care. ranking this whole like top 4 MCs, Mount Rushmore shit. I hate all of that fucking shit. So I don't know whether Book of Human Language is a classic or not. I don't know how people respond to it. I think of it because it came out and it was different and it marked a place in my mind,
Hmm.
and I think it's something to aspire to or something to think about if you're like an artist trying to change, trying to do something different than what's happening around you. Like I think it's worth looking at 1998 and listening to what's out there and then listening to that album and be like, this is where that fits into that and this is where it doesn't fit. But whether or not it's like a classic, I really have no idea. I think more people probably like what's the first one called? Is it All Balls Don't Bounce? Is the name of the first album? Yeah, I think more people probably know that one because Mike Check was a bigger single and stuff like that. But like, I don't know. I don't. No one ever. I mean, I have friends that I think love hip hop that never talk. I mean, we never talk about this album. So whether
Hmm.
it's a classic or not, I don't know. I think it's a really great album. That's all I can really say with any confidence. How people respond to it, I don't know. I hope
Yeah.
AC. I hope AC feels satisfied by people's reaction to it. I've never
Mm.
met the guy, but I have looked up to him for many, many years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, full disclosure, I had never listened to this album prior to you picking it for this episode. I put it on today, honestly, for the first today or yesterday for the first time. But I remember I messaged E right away. I was like, "Yo, I love this shit." Like, I don't know why I never listened to this, but it's great. Were you tuned in to Freestyle Fellowship? Did you listen to this Book of Human Language when it came out?
Yeah, because I was a fan of AC. Because okay, so when Freestyle Fellowship came out, I was in my college rap phase, and I remember my partner was a little jealous of them because they were about the same. I mean, we were trying to do our thing around the same time as like Freestyle Fellowship had been out longer. What's the dude with that? Well, all they do is dance. Fergie's. What were they? Fergie and the two dudes. What is that group called?
Like,
Oh, Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah, they were out around the same time. We were like, "Cool, these motherfuckers is corny, right?" We were just like, when you do something, you just get competitive, right? So we were just like, "That's corny motherfuckers, right?" Whatever. And they used to be called they used to be called At Band Clan. They used to be more of them. But anyway, so we were jealous of everybody a little bit, right? But Freestyle Fellowship, you couldn't deny how nice they were. They were just dope. They were interesting. And I thought they were like a little much because I'm from New York. So I was like, wow, this is a little like, I don't know. But AC was the guy in the crew that I was like, this is the right amount of weird for me. Like there's something about him. Like because Mike and I used to do that trumpet style. And I used to be like, I don't know, but it was different. But right in the middle of that was AC, and he was clear and he was fun. He had that flow that felt soulful. I've always liked the soulful flow. Like Brother Jay is one of my favorite MCs. Like you got like he just had it came from here. And so that's why I picked him. I was like, that's the dude. That's my dude.
Do you like the production on the album?
I do. I think listening to it again. So there's another thing that he does. First of all, that I like, that I also appreciated at the time, and I still appreciate now, is that it's credited as him and Mumbles working together. Mumbles is the producer, and so he's
Yeah, yeah.
giving the right amount of credit to the producer, who clearly put a ton of work into those tracks. I mean, if you listen to the
Hmm.
layering on some of those beats, and like,
Yeah.
he kind of reminds me of like Blockhead, or Blockhead reminds me of him, but it's like those kind of like long loops. But it was also an elevation, I think, of like the jazz like sample style, but he was doing
Hmm.
it in a kind of off kilter way. The vibes of the tracks fit the vibes of the song. Like it's not just jazz sampling, it's made to sound kind of weird, or eerie or
Yeah.
something. It feels atmospheric, and I like that. I think a lot of them go on too long. I think the tracks, like he lets. I mean, this is me being nitpicky. Is like there's a lot of instrumental space after. I mean, songs are shorter now, so I'm getting used to the shorter song now. And like you go back and you listen to older stuff, and you're like, that song's 5 minutes long. It doesn't really need to be 5 minutes long.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that about the jazz piece because I thought the exact same thing when I was listening to this album. It's not your typical like, let me take this snippet of this jazz sample and throw it in here. It's not that typical jazz hip hop sample. It sounds like jazz, but on its own terms.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a
and
good
it
way of
sort
putting it.
of it like intertwines hip hop. It just it's a newer relationship with jazz,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in
yeah,
hip hop, and it sounds so good.
yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
felt like at the time. That's the thing. I was a little bit amazed by people didn't respond to it as the way I thought they would, because it felt like very a little ahead of its time, but very of it. Like it felt like the next thing, like 1998. That seemed like that's what we should like, an elevation in style and an elevation in sampling. Like I felt like, oh, this is the way we're going. But like people didn't really like, as far as I remember, people didn't really respond to it that way.
Yeah. I mean, sonically, for me, it sounds like it could come out tomorrow. It does not sound dated to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The drums are a little heavy for right now. We've gotten really light in our drums. We've gotten very soft in our drums. Yeah, yeah. However you feel about that, we've gotten a little soft in our drums.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also love that there's a regional aspect to it. Like when I heard it, I also heard Dell. I also heard Souls. I also heard Far Side.
Yeah.
Even it's not that, but there's something about it that like brings those artists to mind.
Yeah. That West Coast period, that period of, I mean, there's so much credit and attention and spotlight given to like the emergence of Snoop and all that stuff that like, but right under that, another thing was happening that was also incredibly cool and fun for a different kind of person. Can I also just point out one thing about Book of Female Language that I would be remiss not to mention? That motherfucker put the Jabberwocky in the middle of his album.
Excuse me. Does anyone have the time? No.
If you knew what makes me tick, it'll probably make you sick. Lay my days of my life in front of you and I let you take your pick. Come on, pull back the curtain, but make sure that you are certain that it will be worth the energy that you end up exerting. Now walk out the doorway, step into the foyer. Don't you bother knocking, I'm a grandfather clocking everything you do. I'm seeing through your faultiness, so sprinkle me, but now it's saltiness. The ghetto taught me this, I fall for this, I fight for this, I spend my life for this. And if you put your brain to work, it ain't hard to decipher this. Counting down the days, boy, closer to your doom. Timekeeper for the reaper, the family heirloom. Like staring at my grandfather clock inside my room. It'll never miss a tick-tock, it strikes every day at noon. Every hour on the hour, it'll sing a tune. Every half hour, it'll croon and yell out at the moon. You can't escape the master time, no one is immune. The hands of time will grab you when the moment's opportune.
That statement is so ill. Like I'm not sure what he was saying, but I think what he was saying, I think he was saying two things. Is that like language can invoke a mood without acts, because Jabberwocky is all nonsense, but you still know exactly what the story is. Like he's like, it can invoke a mood and tell a story just through the tone. And the other thing I suspect that he is saying is that my work fits into this. This is a written work, a classic piece of literature, and so is my work. So is our work as rappers. Like we should not like think of ourselves as lesser than or something. That's the first thing I thought when I heard it. I was like, oh, this dude is saying like, I'm the same as this other poet. Like as this famous poet, I could put myself in that context and not be ashamed of that. And even if that's not what this motherfucker was saying, I took that from it and I was like, yeah that's dope.
I like that. Let's go with this is art, right? And in 1998, like that's a bold statement.
Yeah.
Well, I like Rob. I had never heard this album before, and so I appreciated you picking it. I mean, any sort of my education on freestyle fellowship and Aceyalone has been through this podcast, so I appreciate when folks pick projects like this, and it's really good. And that's always a pleasant surprise when somebody picks an album that I don't know that's very good, because you learn something and you also have something new to listen to. So I appreciate you picking this.
Yeah, I'm very happy to put somebody onto that album.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Neil, this has been an incredible conversation. We really appreciate your time this evening, and thank you for answering our questions in really brilliant ways. And do you want folks to know anything before we go? Like any information on, is there going to be physicals of writing on airplanes? Any upcoming projects that you want folks to tap into?
I mean, I'm working on writing an audio podcast right now. There is one thing I would like to say, if you don't mind me being like shamelessly mercenary.
No.
I wrote the album. I wrote Writing on Airplanes thinking that it was for me. A lot of it's therapy. A lot of it was like to be able to get some stuff off my chest and to have something to do and a place to put my energy. And I thought I would be content with that just being what happened, and it comes out and it doesn't matter who hears it. But when you have made something and you actually think it's good and you're proud of it, it's like now you're like, damn, I wish more people would hear it. So I kind of wish more people would hear it. Like it's like weird to look at you. I never thought I would look at Spotify numbers and be like, oh, but that's happening. I'm like feeling like, oh man, I really put myself into this thing, and I feel like what I'm saying is not superficial. Like you might get something out of it, especially if you're close to my age or if you have a child you didn't expect, or you used to be in a religion that you didn't. You know what I mean? There's stuff on the album that's I think is relatable. So like,
Yeah.
if you hear this podcast or hear about this thing, I would say please listen to it. I would really appreciate it. You know, and if you were to write me on Instagram, I would respond, because I don't get a lot of people ask me about my album. So I would hope that if people get a chance, that they hear it.
Well, we've been talking about like folks doing different things in hip hop and how that's refreshing, and I think this is an example of that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate the album, and thank you for talking about it with us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Shout out to Adam Mansbach, because that's the reason I knew about the record. I saw him posting about it, and I'm grateful because
that's my man. That was very nice of him, what he wrote.
Yeah, and I'm into the record. We got to have this conversation, so shout out to him.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Thanks, y'all. Thank you.
Absolutely. This has been The Next Movement. Thanks for listening, folks.
Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Big J Manila is a friend of a friend. It's been a minute. In December, we connected again. Reminiscing on that time we made a posse cut in Bushwick. I'd still like to work together, but I hardly want to push it. After all, it sounded like he had his hands full with kids, then career. Yet I could hear him spitting in his kitchen, so I texted him this beat that I believe was pretty tight. Jay said he liked it too, but was afraid of what he might say. What? Now maybe he was wasted, but I am fascinated by this angsty shit that Jay said. I thought I was jaded. Curmudgeon is my forte. Plus I just got laid off, so what's fucking with poor Jay? I've been wondering all day, but who am I to even pry? Sometimes it kinda stinks to be a guy when everything is TMI and all we do is circle wagons. I bet your girl's laughing like, what would it hurt to ask him? Do y'all remember hardcore rap? When all we had to worry about was the cost of fame. Sure, it wasn't as simple as all that. I know, flatlines, tech nines, and Doug Graves, but please take us back to that hardcore rap. Baseball bats, mad faces, and false rage. These days we struggle to claw back the people, the places, and things that we lost.
As a kid growing up, shit, I thought the biggest problem that I'd have